Welcome to the Phoenix Prosperity Podcast, where wealth meets legacy. Join your host, Tim Fergestad, as we explore the journeys of Phoenix's finest to success and beyond.
All right. Hello, this is Tim Fergestad. Thank you for joining us. My guest today is Marcy Maslov, founder of Empowerment Unlimited Coaching. With over 20 years in Fortune 500 finance and accounting, Marcy now helps entrepreneurs and leaders build ethical, financially confident organizations using innovative tools, including a board game, E-Factor, designed to practice real-world ethics. Welcome to the show, Marcy.
Thank you for having me here.
Excellent. So you also are a speaker now.
Working my way towards that, yes. All kinds of fun with that.
Which, before we started the show, we were just talking about how, as coming from accounting and maybe a little bit of the nerd side, going to being a public speaker, that's got to be a big transition. Is that something you've enjoyed?
In the beginning, it was quite scary. In the beginning, when I gave bad information to the CEO, they'd throw books at my head, literally, right? And I'd have to duck under the table and wait till the last thing hit the wall before I pop my head up and say, I'm just giving you a heads up that we're going to lose money if we don't change things, right?
Yeah.
But now,
which is understandable to be afraid of speaking if your feedback is violent.
Even today, and this is really funny, Tim, but even today, when I get up on a stage, unfortunately, I still have those jitters and I still see the book flying at my head.
Oh, boy.
And I take a breath and then I walk out on the stage and everything's good. But yes, so I am now having fun. The message that I have is really important to me. The audience that I have is really important to me. I try to imagine what the audience needs to hear. And I really like connecting with people, I find. So speaking gives me that chance.
Excellent. And can you speak a little bit to how that came about through the ethical road and accounting?
Yeah, I didn't set out to be an ethics guru or even a game inventor. That was an accident. I spent 25 years in the corporate accounting and finance world, international. Companies would send me overseas. I would be the head finance person. And one day, somebody came to me and said, Marcy, one of your leaders has killed a few people and is raping the girls in the plant when they ask for benefits and is stealing money, has started a business, and is now selling service back to the company. You're the finance person. You need to fix this. What are you going to do? So that was my first ethical dilemma, Tim. First big one. I didn't have an answer. I didn't know how to respond to that. We don't teach people how to respond when somebody asks you to do something like that, or even when somebody asks you to write a bribery check or falsify financial information. We don't teach that anywhere. We just assume
bribery 101 in CPA training.
Be an interesting class. Maybe I should think about creating a class like that. How to do that, right? No, but so we don't teach people how to respond. I didn't know. I had to do some homework. I learned between 400 and 500 people women had been raped, girls, really, age 18. I learned $1 million was missing. I learned my entire accounting staff knew about it, but were so terrified to say anything about it that they did nothing. So I put together a plan with headquarters, and they figured out I was the whistleblower, and somebody one night followed me home and pointed a gun at my head. Jeez. So that was my trauma. I got out of it, I got out of it because somebody helped me out, in the neighborhood where I was. But yeah, things could have changed very quickly. But that was the beginning of how I morphed from accounting and finance to ethics. And I use both today because a lot of times not knowing the numbers leads to an opening for unethical behavior or even theft and fraud, right?
Sure. So if you're not on top of them, things will, I don't know if escalate's the right word, but people will take advantage.
Right. If you don't know your numbers, people will definitely take advantage of you. And particularly the bookkeeper or the family friend that knows you never look at your numbers until tax time, right? So, but I wanted to create a safe space. I wanted to actually teach people how to say no to the boss asking you to falsify financial information or lie on bank applications or do things that we know are unethical or illegal, right? And so the game came about literally because I needed, first of all, therapy. I needed to get it out of my head, but I also needed to create a space where people could feel free to talk without fear. And so the game is now a way that I teach ethics. The game is the way that I now teach people how to think critically, make decisions, how to communicate, how to assess what's an ethical dilemma in the first place, which is the starting point. And it allows me, while most people look at me when I introduce myself and say that I'm a game inventor, they're like, oh, you're a game inventor. How cool, right? So it for me, the nerd that has trouble interacting with people, that's like the great opening.
Okay. Cool. So it sounds like it was fairly organic where you're doing accounting and you just in the nature of forensic accounting you run into unethical behavior and then when you start to see enough of it you specialize and you have to start teaching and training it and the game came out of that process.
Exactly right. Yes.
Okay. By the way, have you made any other games?
So I have different versions of the game. I have one for CPAs, I have one for attorneys, I have one for insurance brokers.
Nice.
I started one for medical, but I never finished that one. So
Okay, so this is largely a way of teaching different certifications, right? You need continuing education things. As a real estate agent here in Arizona, I have different requirements
you
every
have
two
what is
years.
it at 3 years? You have to do 3 hours every year or something like that.
Yeah, it's they changed it a couple of years ago. I don't remember what it is now, but I'm going to find out pretty soon.
You there, Tim. But yeah, so many of the professions have a requirement for ethics training to renew the license. So
Right.
I can definitely do that, but I also do it for businesses who want to have a common message about the ethical behavior that they want to promote. Here's what I say. If you don't have parameters of ethical behavior that everybody understands and buys into, you're letting everybody else but you make the decision. And that is a recipe for disaster because we tend to assume everybody has the same definition. And that then leads to the assumption that everybody will respond in the same way. That's a big mistake,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. There's
That's a big mistake. So I don't like to leave anybody else in charge of my decision making. So I like to have those parameters. And within the game portion, I can actually guide people and let them learn what it feels like when somebody asks you to do something and it's a safe space so that you can do it without being harmed, right?
right,
But then
right.
when it really happens in real life, you have now some tools on how to say no to the boss or the person that's asking you to do that, and you have some ways of protecting yourself. You know what your rights are, and your resources are should that be, something that happens. Unfortunately, a lot of people tell me they've been through really crazy stuff. So particularly business owners, almost everyone that I work with has said at some point somebody has stolen from them or
Mhm.
somebody has done something that misrepresented their organization and it caused them some level of damage, and I work with them to try to repair that damage.
Okay. I imagine you get to a certain size where you, depending upon your industry, may have third-party audits at some point, right? And so generally at that level, you don't quite see the same issues. Is that right?
The audits, the ones that I work with, a lot of that type of difficulty is related to protecting your data and data privacy. So they're slightly different issues. They're not going to be the theft and fraud, but they might be misrepresentation of information, or they
Okay.
might just be literally they're not secure. We're talking a lot now about AI, and AI, and automation and fake, all the fake stuff. Those are now dangers that we
Hmm.
have to sort of prepare for as well, because even the smallest businesses right now are getting hacked, right? And like what I worry about is I have video out there of me speaking.
Hmm.
So somebody could get that video and change my facial expressions or stuff like that. And so I will work with people that they have to create an ethics policy that also protects against people having unauthorized access with them. So that's not exactly ethics, it's sort of like compliance. But
Okay.
I will work with people that don't know how to deal with that, or that have had some losses as a result of people not, clicking on the wrong email, clicking on a phishing scheme, and then, stuff starts disappearing. I will help people or connect them with people that I know if I can't do it.
Okay. Wow. And I guess in terms of can you give an example, an E factor of a real world business ethical dilemma that, yeah.
This is the one. It's going to be such a silly one, but this is the one that is the most hotly debated every single time. Okay. So, you walk into your colleague's cubicle and you see a stack of church bazaar flyers on the desk. Is that an ethical use of company resources? So why would you think that, first of all, what's the ethical dilemma there, and why would you think that's so hotly debated? What would you think?
Well, I'm guessing they're not working at the church,
Probably not.
that they're using the printer, spending time and resources on something non-work related.
See, you went right away to non-work related because it was for the church, right? What if I then said to you, well, the company is sponsoring a charitable event, and so we're going to be promoting everything at the church, and so make these flyers. Doesn't that change the whole direction of your answer? Because now
Sure.
it is work related, right? So what
Mhm.
happens is people make assumptions. They hear some words and they say, oh, church, so not work related. Immediate connection, right? What I do in the game is I give scenarios that are like that and have you interpret what that means and understand how you use your words and interpret what's
People have to
going.
think critically.
Yes, we do.
Excellent.
Sometimes it helps.
All
Yep.
right.
So
Yeah.
that's an example of a scenario. I have over 1,000 scenarios by now, and they're all real. A lot of people have asked me to put scenarios in so that I can train on the things that they've suffered,
Right.
from.
Sure.
One of the big ones that I put in was somebody sent me an email after playing my game and said, okay, I'm going to tell you this. I want you to create a scenario. It was related to, he was a supplier, a vendor, a buyer for a company. And he got Super Bowl tickets from one of his companies that he would buy from. And
Mhm.
so the company had a policy that said you can't, if you get gifts from your vendors, you can't keep them. You have to turn them in, right? So
Okay.
he kept them and he went to the Super Bowl. And the whole time he was at the Super Bowl, he's like, I'm feeling uncomfortable. I'm feeling like bad, right? And sure enough, a week later, the bosses called him in, said, did you go to the Super Bowl? Yes. Did you get the tickets from the vendor? Yes. You're fired. Like the guy got fired, right? And I don't know if it's a guy or a girl. Honestly, it was like an anonymous email.
Okay.
So that person asked me to put that kind of a scenario in the game because it took him over a year to find a new job and at half the salary of what he was making for that original job. So we don't think a lot sometimes about the actions that we take or the decisions that we make. That was a really costly one. Like,
Well, who was playing in the Super Bowl? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Okay.
so this person was really shrewd. He wouldn't tell me. Because then I could have figured out what game and where and all. No, he wouldn't tell me.
Yeah. Yeah. How frequently and what industries are you doing that? It sounds like you've made a few different versions of the game now.
Few different versions. I can work with almost any industry and almost any profession. I customize the scenarios, but what I have found over the years, the game is 18 years old, and I found over the years there's a core set of scenarios that are the same for every industry. It's how you treat customers. It's how you treat employees. It's how you communicate. It's what types of activities are okay or not okay, right? Those are pretty standard across the board. But I'll change, like for the medical, I would change instead of using the word client, I would change to patient. Or for insurance, it would be brokers and dealers and things like, and realtors, same thing. So I changed the language on the cards, but the scenarios are a lot of the same.
Okay.
And I work with industries and sizes of business all the way from 4 people in a company to, the Intels of the world that have a huge accounting department or legal department, and they want all of their people to be trained all together. So it's about how much an organization wants to do the training, and have everybody get the same message.
Okay. Okay. Are there any misconceptions when people say, "Oh, we have to have an ethical course or something"? They don't know
Oh,
exactly what that entails.
always, always. Yep. I mean, most ethics, you've taken some ethics training, so you kind of
Mhm.
know that some of it could be pretty boring. Some of it doesn't necessarily apply to you, but you have to do that basic training to learn the
Mhm.
compliance and the rules, right?
A lot of protected classes and
A
things like
lot of
that.
protected classes. There's nothing in the handbook that says that your ethics training or any training has to be boring. First rule of Marcy, right? Um, but there are misconceptions because, first of all, especially right now, what I'm finding is a lot of people have even some difficulty recognizing what is an ethical dilemma. They'll see things differently. Like that example that I gave you of the church bazaar flyer, some people don't think that's a problem because you're doing something for the church, and so you have to be allowed to do it, right? Some people have the old school like me where you were taught anything that you do that's outside of the assignment is not allowed, right? Like that's the I started work in the 80s and dating myself, and that was like military style, function. So the misconception is that small businesses can't suffer from unethical behavior. False. The misconception is that your best friend is going to treat you correctly all the time. False, right? Mostly the people that steal from us are people that we know and love and trust, or the accounting people, because we all know that the accounting people know that you're never looking at your numbers, right? So
Or they also are more comfortable with them and know better
they
how
know
to
how to
play with them.
hide the stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So there's a lot of stuff, and all I really do is again, I get people on the same page. What is your definition of ethics? The very first presentation I ever gave, the very first on ethics, was to 50 CEOs, and I asked them, "What's your definition of ethics? And would your team have the same definition?"
Yeah.
And I had 12 of them stand up and wait to tell me they didn't know the answer to that question. And they were going to go back to their office and ask their team what their definition was. That blew my mind. And because I'm thinking, there's just Marcy, just me, my normal self. And these are CEOs that I, look up to and respect. And they
Mhm.
didn't know the answer to a question I asked. Right. So that's where we have to start our conversation. What's your definition? And from there, then you can identify what the parameters of acceptable behavior are, what the consequences might be, what your choices to solve the problems might be, and then come up with a solution that's going to work, right?
Right.
A lot of people just assume we know how to do things. We know how to solve the ethical dilemma. We know what to do when somebody says, write that check or change that number because it doesn't look good. Or I won't get my bonus if you pay this bill or whatever it might be, right?
Right.
So my goal is to help people stay in business. That's where the prosperity comes, right? My goal is to help people understand and create those parameters because that protects the assets of their business. That protects the value of their business. That helps them make a better decision on what they're going to spend their money and time on. And that's
Right.
really where I'm at.
Super valuable. Yeah, very
Yeah.
valuable stuff too. Okay,
Hmm.
it sounds like you have just inherently by a lot of people I have on the show, their impact is through their work, right? They change lives, save companies, help people do this, and yours is no exception. Um, and future success and prosperity, right? Keeping people on the right track, keeping the ship aimed in the right direction.
Exactly. Exactly. But it's not that easy. I want you to think back, and anybody that's watching, I want you to think back when you started your business. Did you have the mindset of an entrepreneur or did you have a mindset of an employee taking a job, right? It took me a lot of years to actually switch from employee mindset to an entrepreneur mindset that had the decision-making ability and could actually grow my business and make this expand beyond all my borders that I even imagined, right? You have to do that.
Right.
You have to work
Yeah.
through that.
Most people start off uh, running their own company as an employee. They're working in their company, or they made themselves their own job, is what I'm trying to say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Um, okay, so Do you have any big 2026 goals other than just growing the keynote speaking, or is that it? Is that the big one?
Oh, I'm growing the keynote. I want to get out in front of more audiences. I want to tell my story a little bit more of it. I also am working with somebody up in Canada. We're going to take the game into Canada this year.
Okay.
And from Canada, who knows where we go next? I might go to some other international locations. And really, I just want to continue helping people to make their business the best business that it can be, and ethically, of course, make the right decisions so that they actually stay out of trouble, right? So, but the big plans are more keynote speaking, larger audiences, and then taking E-Factor to Canada.
Okay, very cool. I want to backtrack for a second and just ask a little bit about your trainings. Are they getting people to think about ethics, or are you trying to guide them into shaping their own company ethics and values? A little both.
Right. So that's a really good question. Every client is a little bit different. So for the group of clients that have to, the professionals who have to do continuing education, it's just ethics training. What does the law say for their profession, right?
Okay.
For the companies that actually do have to do some form of ethics training or choose to do that because they want to get the leadership on the same page, that's actually about building business value. That's actually about ethical leadership. That's actually about what values does the company have, and how do we express those values, and how do we ensure that all the employees engage and adopt those values or know what their part of them are, right? So it really depends on who comes to me and what their purpose is. If they've gotten into trouble, the third audience is those people who've actually gotten into trouble ethically and they want to actually now create an ethics code and parameters. I will work on them with coaching as well as, the training through the game to help them identify what their values really are, and how I'll help them hire the right people, because a lot of times we have to find people who adopt the same values.
Sure. Okay, good stuff. So, reflection question for you. What do you wish you knew sooner about building wealth and success earlier in your career?
Oh man, so many mistakes have I made. We need a whole other podcast for that one. Truly, I wish I'd had more entrepreneurial mindset rather than employee mindset in the beginning.
Okay.
Because I would have taken more chances. I would have built a little bit differently. I would have insisted that the business pay for me sooner. Like, you have to work on, that kind of thing. And a lot of my clients, they're not even paying themselves yet, right? They might be 6-figure, 7-figure salary and zero bottom line, and they're not paying themselves a salary yet. I wish I'd had that mindset right from the beginning. We don't teach that anywhere, right?
No, it's not your general accounting practices or the gap sort of.
No,
it's
big gap in that training.
Income, expenses, and you get what's left.
Yep, exactly right. So I wish I'd flipped that around. There's a book called Profit First. You may have heard of it, Mike Michalowicz, and I was a Profit First advisor for a while.
Nice.
Yep.
Okay. Very cool.
Yep. So I wish I'd flipped that around and really gotten into that earlier. But I don't regret anything. Everything that I've done has been in the right moment of time, and it becomes a story that I tell people when they're struggling. And I have a lot of stories. So I don't regret it. I just wish I'd learned it faster.
Right. Okay. Great answer. Thank you, Marcy.
You're
okay.
welcome.
Well, if people would like to connect with you or learn more, where can they go? What should they do?
So they can look me up at Marcy my email is marcy at e-factorgame.com. The website is e-factorgame.com. And they can also look me up at businessethicscoach.com. I have 2 websites, one for the actual game and one for the coaching and business sides of things.
Okay.
So,
and Marcy Maslov on LinkedIn as well.
On LinkedIn. Yep. You can find me on LinkedIn as well.
All right. Excellent. Good stuff. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. Thank you very much, Marcy Maslov, for joining me and sharing your insights into the industry today. Thank you.
Inspired by our guests? Visit phoenixprosperitypodcast.com/guest and join us on the show and share your success story with Tim. The spotlight awaits.